Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you, querida Presidenta. Thank you all. I promise that I followed instructions, so I did everything I had to do. I pushed all the right buttons from my side, and I'm delighted to be with you virtually. First of all, let me start by saying that I hope you are all keeping safe and healthy in these challenging times. The work of the European institutions in the last 2 weeks, I think, proved our resilience and the ability of the European Union to act in times of crisis, and the determination to keep our work on track, contrary to what certain doomsayers were predicting. So today's meeting at LIBE, I think it's a prime example of this resilience of our institutions. Let me quickly move to the subject of today's agenda. There is no doubt that Greece faces an incredibly challenging situation, one that is completely unprecedented. The European Union leaders who were present in yet another extraordinary, unprecedented, tangible sign of EU solidarity at our external border on the 3rd of March, made it very clear that this difficult task cannot fall on Greece alone. It is the responsibility of the whole of Europe. And we have shown beyond a doubt that the entire European Union will put its strength and support behind member states which are faced with extreme pressure. I am pleased to report that the comprehensive action plan with concrete support measures we adopted on the 4th of March is already delivering results. The 2 rapid border intervention operations by our European Border and Coast Guard Agency at the land and sea borders between Greece and Turkey were launched, and I'm sure that Fabrice Leggeri will be able to tell you more about them shortly. Following the activation by Greece of the civil protection mechanism, member states have offered more than 90,000 items of assistance to Greece, assistance that was particularly needed in these challenging moments. And finally, financial assistance of up to 700 million euros will be made available to Greece. 350 million immediately available. Last week we proposed the amended budget for the other 350 million, on which your committee will be voting soon. I still remember in my previous capacity how quickly the European Parliament was able to pass an amending budget back in 2015 to triple at the time the amount of money and resources that we used back then to face with the first wave of the crisis. So with the support of Frontex as well as the IOM, a new voluntary return scheme will be launched as soon as possible that will support the Greek authorities to promote the voluntary return of up to 5,000 migrants who arrived before 1st of January and are currently present on the island. That is, this is yet another initiative that would help decongestionate the situation at the islands. And EASO will be deploying additional experts in support to the Greek asylum service, which you all know it's already overstressed. So I'm very happy that this immediate support from the European Union the day after this crisis at our external border occurred proved our resilience, our capacity to act fast. And I'm very happy also to report, and I think that the ministers will confirm in a while, that the situation at the border with Turkey now seems to have stabilized. I think, in a nutshell, what we did in the last 3-4 weeks proved very clearly that no one can blackmail, intimidate, or bully the European Union. When our system is tested, our unity prevails. Let me now come quickly to the contingency plan for Greece on COVID-19 related, which poses yet another challenging situation. I don't want to go into much detail in this because Commissioner Johansson, who will follow me, has been discussing this emergency contingency plan for Greece with Minister Mitarakis and others. So she will give you a more detailed account of this crisis program, as she will do with our initiative, actively supported by President von der Leyen, to relocate up to 1,600 unaccompanied minors from Greece. And I thank the member states that have already assumed a commitment to help us to that respect. I will not refrain from mentioning our broader work of EU response to coronavirus that has certain issues that relate to home, to internal affairs. You are all familiar with the measures that we took to restrict travel into the European Union for a month. I think that the situation compels us to renew these restrictions under prescribed guidance that we have offered this week, and we will continue to do so. And as regards the measures taken by practically all member states on our internal borders, we understand that these are exceptional situations that may justify these decisions, but we want this to be done orderly according to guidance that we have been preparing and discussing with our member states. And we also want to see a horizon of normalization and coming back to normal when the situation allows for it. So let me conclude, President, saying that whilst all this is happening, we cannot switch to doing only crisis management at the European level. Our work should not only be crisis management. Part of steering our union through this crisis is to ensure that we can still progress on all our strands of work and not let our system become destabilized. And during these challenging times, we will continue to work in parallel, not only on immediate, but also on medium and long-term actions. On the one hand, to support Greece in handling the extraordinary challenges it is confronted with, in full compliance with EU law, fundamental rights, human dignity, and on the other hand, continue our intensive work to advance on proposals for the new pact on migration and asylum, on which Commissioner Johansson and myself have a very clear and very strong mandate from our President and from the European Parliament. So I want to send this message of reassurance that our work continues unabated on the pact, and it is also clear that we will take into account in our work the exceptional circumstances that were unforeseen but now are in front of us concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. We will continue working towards sustainable solutions which take into account the different and varied challenges faced by our member states. Let me conclude, President, by thanking you for organizing this exchange today, as well as President Lopez Aguilar, whom I saw virtually earlier. And I would to assure you and all the coordinators of the political groups with whom we have been in close contact during these weeks that we will continue to work together with you to face this unprecedented situation. Thank you, Mr. President, Mrs. President.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now, Commissioner Johansson, are you here? Can you hear me? Please push your button to talk. Commissioner Johansson? No connection. We continue.
Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Welcome. You have the floor for 7 minutes. Thank you very much,
Mrs. President and honorable members. We are in the middle of a crisis, and most likely it will get worse before it gets better. So what is needed in this time of crisis? we need immediate operational actions. Second, we need solidarity between people, between member states, and globally. Now it's time to protect the most vulnerable and to protect our capacity to help. And third, in time of crisis, it's very important that we stick to our values and to respect fundamental rights. We must make sure that any crisis, not this corona crisis, not any other crisis, are being used to harm the rule of law or the fundamental values of our union. Refugee camps in countries of first asylum are severely ill-equipped to support a large number of persons who already live in precarious conditions, and the spreading of the virus in such context may result in a massive humanitarian crisis. This is a danger both for refugees hosted in third countries outside the EU and for those living in unbearable conditions on the Greek islands. We now know that in Greece we have had the first cases in a migrant camp outside Athens. There are 20 confirmed cases in this camp. I think that they can manage, but this is a well-managed camp and they have access to healthcare, but still it's a strong warning signal. There have also been 6 confirmed cases on Lesbos outside the migratory camps. What we need to do now is to take immediate actions to protect people. The Greek government and Greek authorities, of course, are responsible, but the EU Commission are providing massive support, and we must do that. And we also need the massive support of other member states. We are in more or less constant contact with the Greek government and the Greek authorities, and we have agreed upon an emergency response action plan. I will not go through the whole, but it contains, for example, that now we need to start relocating people out, the vulnerable people out of the camps into the hotel rooms that are prepared and are now empty. And to find these vulnerable people so that they will not get infected if or when the virus reach the camps. They have to be separated. We need to send now medical reply to each island, both for migrants and for the local people, of course, on the islands. We have already supported with a lot of medical equipment, and we will continue doing so. The new arrivals has to be separated from those that are already in the camps. We need to do much more testing and to have people that find positive into a quarantine. We need, of course, travel restrictions, and we need to have a lot of information to people how they should act. But we should also need to ease the pressure on these camps on the island. We are now working on this relocation of the unaccompanied minors. We have 8 member states that have committed themselves to take 1,600 unaccompanied minors. And I think that the first one will be relocated this week or to the latest next week, before Easter at least. And we are working in a very positive atmosphere with these member states that are actually showing concrete solidarity now when it's needed the most. I know that the Greek authorities has identified around 2,000 unaccompanied minors that have been age assessed and are ready to be relocated. We're also working on the voluntary returns to also ease the pressure on the islands, and this program is already running. And we are providing a lot of financial support. I will go through this for you. Immediately we have available 350 million euros. This is the continuing of support to reception capacity in the mainland, rental of accommodation for 25,000 beds, cash assistance to 90,000 migrants provided by UNHCR. This is totally 190 million. Support increase of the reception capacity in the mainland, 31 camps, management and service provided by IOM, approximately 100 million. Continuation of targeted support to key protection activities for families and children, the provision of services in Karatepe site in Lesbos run by UNHCR, approximately 25 million. the support of the temporary accommodation scheme in hotels to get the vulnerable people relocated out of the camps, approximately 35 million. This money is already working and available. Then we would like to have the additional 350 million, and this should be used for 280 million will be made available for the construction of 5 new multi-purpose reception and identification centers on the Greek islands during this year to provide far more adequate up-to-standard accommodation. That's 220 million. The voluntary return and reintegration assistance will be 10 million euros. And then service to the new camps and emergency items, food, transportation, additional staff for medical teams, as well as increased support to Greek asylum service, 50 million euros. And then 50 million is proposed to be made available for ISF border and visa to cover the cost related to the deployment and operational cost of border guards and police officers at the external borders of Greece and Bulgaria, 50 million. Additional, and in an effort to step up capacities, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency Frontex will be reinforced by 10 million euros. And finally, 10 million to the European Asylum Support Office, EASO, for deployment of experts in Greece. So, what I would like to end with, what is equally important in these times, it's also that people must have the right to apply for asylum. I very much welcome the announcement of the Greek government that told me that now the newly arrival that come during March will have the right to apply for asylum. This is very, very important. It's in these times, it's important to stand up for our values and fundamental rights, as I also said in my beginning. Honourable members, may I just add one other aspect, not only applicable to Greece, but for all over the European Union. In this time of crisis, it's always a risk of xenophobia rising. I think it's important for us to recognize the important contributions a lot of people with migrant background now are providing as healthcare workers, doctors, providing services or do voluntary works. Across Europe, migrants are mobilizing to support respective host societies. I think this is very important to recognize. I also welcome the measures that several member states and regions are taking to facilitate the access to welfare and healthcare of migrants and refugees. It's of crucial importance in this phase to implement the recommendations coming from the WHO organization in this regard, ensuring no segment of our societies is left behind and is fully supported. I would like to stress the importance of forming a more welcoming society. Many migrants have a vulnerable situation in their countries, vulnerable situation in the labor market, huge risk of being unemployed, vulnerable situation when it comes to economic resources. To fight xenophobia, discrimination and racism, and to help vulnerable migrants, I will also make the consultation with civil society, employers, trade unions and other relevant organizations to develop options to protect and support migrants and refugees and maximize the economic contribution they can bring in the recovery phase, not only in Greece, but all over the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mrs. Grass, are you here? Mrs. Grass? Can you hear me? Push the button to talk.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay. Welcome. You have the floor for 7 minutes. And thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair, honorable members, esteemed commissioners. I would like to start by, first of all, thanking the LIBE Committee for convening this video conference on the situation at the EU external borders in Greece. It shows the importance that the European Parliament is giving to this important issue, also in these exceptional circumstances. Following the announcement of the Turkish authorities on opening the border towards the EU at the end of February, the Council reacted promptly, showing concrete solidarity towards member states affected and in particular Greece. All member states reiterated that we remain determined to effectively protect the EU's external borders and that illegal crossings will not be tolerated. In an extraordinary Council meeting on 4th March, we sent a clear message that while acknowledging the increased migratory burden that Turkey is facing, we strongly reject Ankara's use of migratory pressure for political purposes. We expressed clearly our expectation that Turkey will continue with the full implementation of the EU-Turkey statement from 2016. At the same time, the EU wants to continue supporting refugee communities in Turkey as it has been doing for the past years. Regarding concrete solidarity towards Greece, all member states, the European Commission and EU agencies are strengthening their support through different means. Frontex has answered straight away with the urgent deployment of 2 rabbit operations to help ease the migratory pressure. This prompt deployment of the agency's teams was of paramount importance to strengthen the operational capacity of Greece. It has also served as a clear signal of the EU solidarity and has been an effective deterrence toward this kind of instigated pressure. These 2 operations have to be continued for as long as necessary and have been considered as an absolute priority in the context of the restraints imposed by the COVID-19 outbreak. The deployment of EASO of an additional 160 experts in Greece is also underway with an accelerated procedure. 40 people have already been recruited and trained, and by the end of August, all experts will be fully operational. Greece also activated the Union's civil protection mechanism for equipment that will help them provide arriving migrants with basic needs. Member states have been very responsive and quick in their reactions. Delivery of materials, despite current complications at the borders, has been concluded successfully. The EU has offered an immediate assistance of 350 million euros to Greece, which is available to support border and migration management. Most projects have already been awarded, as Commissioner Johansson has reported. Our assistance also includes measures to prevent an outbreak of COVID-19 among the migrant population and on the Aegean Islands. Commissioner Johansson has also reported on the contingency planning that is underway with the Greek authorities in this regard. Several member states declared their readiness to relocate unaccompanied minors from Greece. We understand there are almost 5,000 unaccompanied minors present in the country, out of which around 2,100 can be immediately relocated from the mainland. We are in close contact with the Greek authorities and the Commission services in order to implement this relocation exercise. All these actions are a strong expression of our solidarity with Greece, and they show that we are firm and united in our commitment to protect the EU's external borders. Despite certain incidents, we can say that the current situation is stable, both at the land and sea borders. We will continue closely monitoring the situation and ensure coordination between all those involved through the relevant channels. On that note, last week the Presidency organized an information exchange with a number of stakeholders to monitor the migratory situation on the Eastern Mediterranean route and in the Western Balkans region. Another information exchange will follow next week. In a similar vein, the Presidency will continue the cooperation and assistance with the Western Balkan partners in addressing migratory challenges. To conclude, let me thank you once more for organizing this video conference. The ideas coming from these debates are important in finding efficient and appropriate answers to current challenges that we must address jointly and in a comprehensive manner. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mrs. Grass. Mr. Chrysokoidis, can you hear me? Push the button, please. Okay, welcome. You have the floor. Welcome. You have 7 minutes. Push the button, please.
Yes.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, Brussels. Good morning to all of you. Thank you for the invitation. It's my second time during last 6 months in Libe. And first of all, allow me to express my satisfaction for being here with you and the opportunity given to present my country's position on this very important issue. It goes without saying that Greece, as an external member state of European Union, faces a lot of challenges regarding the managing of its external borders, which are at the same time external border of European Union. I will start by saying a few words for parts of our external borders with Albania, Northern Republic of Macedonia, and Bulgaria. The situation with these countries is quite good, and we don't face particular problems. The cooperation is good through established channels, and potential issues are dealt immediately and very efficient. Also, during the last period of time, while we are facing the pandemic and we have the well-known movement restrictions, we don't face problems, and all arising issues are addressed properly in time. The main point of concern for us is our borders with Turkey. I will not repeat this recent development in that respect. I am quite sure that you all know what have happened the last month. The only thing that I would like to underline is that the mass migrants movement, it was not a spontaneous act, but it was manipulated and encouraged by the Turkish authorities. The reaction of Greece was prompt and proper from operational point of view, and we successfully managed to prevent the significant numbers of migrants that had been gathering in large groups on the border line of Evros River, although they tried to cause damage to the fence on a daily basis, as well as to cause injuries to our border forces by throwing stones or smoke grenades, fire bombs, and tear gases at them. We stayed decisive, calm, and determined to protect our and EU's external borders, and this is the message that I would like to convey, that Greece is determined to protect its external borders. For us, this is a vital and very important priority. Additionally, I would like to refer to some other issues of the current migratory crisis. One of them has to do with the profile of the people that try to enter Greece illegally. Contrary to what was said, the vast majority of them, almost 70%, were Afghans, people from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, young men, and certainly not coming from the fronts of the war, from Idlib in Syria, as it widely spread by the Turkish side. And this leads me to the second comment regarding the publication and dissemination of fake news by the Turkish authorities. It is really sad what took place and was also reproduced by some media, mass media around the world. I would like to emphasize that although we were brutally attacked, our forces acted professionally, in full respect of human rights, national, European, and international law, and unfortunately, that was not the case for our neighbors. Another issue that I would like to mention has to do with the spirit of solidarity. It was demonstrated during the crisis we faced. The prompt reaction of Frontex and the immediate deployment of the rapid operation and the precious operational support of many member states were really remarkable, and we would like to express our deep appreciation and thanks. We express our gratitude to the European Commission, to the leadership of the European Commission, to Vice President Mr. Skinas, the Commissioner, Mrs. Johansson, and of course, the head of Frontex, Mr. Fabrice Leggeri, who goes very close to us every day. Similar to what happened at Evros region, we also faced at our sea borders with Turkey. The Turkish Coast Guard, especially the first days of March, was completely absent and avoided responding to any request from the Hellenic Coast Guard to prevent the departures of migrants from the other side, from the Turkish coastline. By concluding, please allow me to refer to the pandemic we are currently facing. Maybe this is the first time in our era, in our generation, that we all together, all member states, are confronting with a common enemy. An enemy which is strong, cannot be predicted, and the most important, it's invisible. We have to stand all together to support each other, and especially those member states that are suffering most. We have to demonstrate solidarity, our European solidarity, and when the crisis will be over, to come out stronger, wiser, and reaffirming our common European values. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Chrysodokoidis. Thank you very much. We will continue with Minister Mitaraki. Can you hear me? Please push the button. Thank you. Welcome.
Hello.
You have the floor.
Thank you so
7
much.
minutes.
Thank you so much. Alongside the health crisis, we're also facing a migration crisis with substantial increase in arrivals since last July. Michael Chrysodokoidis gave you more details on these issues. I would like also to express our sincere gratitude for all the support that the European Union provided. Regarding reception capacity, we're clearly facing immense pressure, with a total of 100,000 people in centres or housing, of which 40,000 people are in the islands, and 19,000 are said to be in Moria. There are three key reasons why we have this overcrowding, why we have 6 times the capacity. First, we faced an 86% increase in arrivals since July 2019, compared to the same period in the previous year. We had a slow asylum decision process. And thirdly, because of the limitations of the EU-Turkey joint statement, which only accepts returns from the islands, we have limited moves from the islands to the mainlands because of the statement. Despite these limitations, in the first semester of 2020, 10,000 people were transferred to the mainland. We're working very closely with the Commission, with Ylva and Margaritis, to increase the figure in the second semester, including the enhanced voluntary return program for 5,000 people recently announced jointly between Commissioner Johansson and us. To improve these conditions and increase capacity, we need this funding for the new reception centres in the island to replace the camps like Moria, Vial and Vathi. We cannot change the situation in Moria overnight, but we can make major changes by year-end at the latest. We need to complete construction of new camps on the mainland. We have already completed 2 camps in Malakasa and Ceres in March, and we moved 2,000 people newly arrived from the islands. We need to create new places in apartments, and we have asked for funding for 5,000 additional apartment spaces, and we're working with the International Organization of Migration for additional 10,000 to 15,000 places. It's critical to finalize this funding as a matter of priority. And also we need to enforce the EU-Turkey joint statement, as the Presidency also mentioned, and also amend it in a way that actually reduces flows, allows for returns for people whose applications have been rejected and have entered through the land borders. It does not restrict returns to people processed in the islands alone, so we don't have that overcrowding in the islands, and also provides for an enhanced role of Frontex in both sides of the borders. We should note that Turkey has notified that they're no longer accepting returns because of COVID. Now, talking about COVID, since the beginning of the crisis, we have had around 1,500 incidents. We had 51 deaths in total, 1 today and 1 yesterday. These cases are predominantly on the mainland, as islands remain better protected and special measures have been taken. We have, as of today, no incidents in the reception centres in the islands. We have only 1 affected camp, that's on the mainland, very close to Athens, where 20 people have tested positive. We've taken all the necessary measures for the health of the people there and also to restrict movement from the camps. I understand there is high level of concerns in Parliament and in Commission about the situation in the islands, and I do share the concerns. We're working hard to prevent incidents, and we have taken measures as follows. First of all, from the 1st of March, we're separating new arrivals. No new arrivals from Turkey are entering the existing camps. Secondly, we're restricting access into and out of the camps. We're setting special health units in the camps for testing and isolation, and we have asked for additional support in that. And we're also informing residents in the language they use about the measures needed for COVID. It is clear that our health system is facing pressure. Resources are not unlimited, neither in the islands or on the mainland. We're working very closely with the Commission, with the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, the Red Cross, the IOM, the Médecins Sans Frontières, and many other NGOs to help alleviate these issues. Some have argued to transfer people in the mainland, that is, from non-infected areas to infected areas. But we do not have empty spaces to do that. We will require additional funding for additional spaces, but these spaces cannot be ready within a few days. We will strongly welcome any offers of relocation from member states which have capacity, because we cannot resolve this crisis instantly and alone. Myself, I live in the island of Chios. I know the problem from the first hand. On the issue of asylum, we're increasing an operational efficiency. We are improving our legal framework so we can issue quality decisions with full respect to our international obligations, but at a shorter time frame, which is important so we don't keep people in the reception camps for a long period, and we're getting very good support from EASO. We had to freeze application in March given the extraordinary situation in our borders. We appreciate concern raised also by ILVA, and we took the appropriate measure given the extraordinary circumstances. We had the legal base for that decision. We had to protect our national security, public order and public health. This freeze is no longer applicable. From the 1st of April, we've gone back to the normal procedures. During this dual crisis, I would like to close with this important part. Unaccompanied minors continue to be among the most vulnerable populations. We're working on an emergency response plan to transfer all unaccompanied minors from the islands to the mainland, initially to transit shelters, to facilitate the identification of those eligible for relocation and the accommodation of the rest in age-appropriate shelters. As per the unaccompanied minors that cross the border in March, they are being transferred to shelters in the mainland. I would like to thank the Commission, especially Commissioner Ylva Johansson and Member States for the relocation initiative for unaccompanied minors, especially those Member States that are willing to do the relocation during these very difficult days of the COVID crisis. And also, my alternate minister and former member of the European Parliament, George Koumoutsakos, is coordinating a special conference for enhancing the protection of unaccompanied minors, working with the Commission and international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leggeri, are you here? Can you hear me? Can you push the button? Mr. Leggeri? You continue with Mr. Flaherty. Okay. Mr. O'Flaherty, are you here? Can you hear me? Moment. Leggeri again? Mr. Leggeri, can you hear me? Can you speak, please? Push the button. Please. No? Mr. O'Flaherty, can you hear me and can you speak, please? Pushing the button. No? So we can continue with Mr. Herbst. Okay. Okay. Oh, Mr. O'Flaherty, welcome. You have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, honourable members. We appreciate very much the invitation to participate. The Fundamental Rights Agency has been deeply engaged with the situation in Greece since 2015, with a presence on the ground since 2017, and I was there myself just 14 days ago. Let me begin by expressing appreciation for the strong cooperation with the Greek authorities, as well as with the relevant EU agencies. And before getting to specific points, I would like to state two fundamental issues. The first is that there will be no sustainable solution to the situation we're discussing today without solidarity from across the EU member states. And secondly, when we speak of fundamental rights in this context, it's the fundamental rights of everyone, migrants, but also of local populations, such as on the islands. Turning to the specific issue of COVID-19 and the camps, the acute danger has already been addressed. We appreciate the actions of the Greek authorities in the last couple of weeks. However, we think more needs to be done to ensure physical distancing among migrants themselves. For instance, as Commissioner Johansson has mentioned, using hotel capacity on islands to allow for the physical distancing. We would also wish to see more disinfection capacity put in place within the camps. And we would urge the Greek authorities to recommence asylum procedures, including to depopulate these facilities. And while they cannot be done face-to-face at the present time, we would wish to consider that virtual tools be tried again. Skype was used in the past with mixed results, but in this particular moment, that is particularly relevant. More generally, speaking to issues of the delay in asylum procedures, these raise issues of deadlines, including for family reunification, and we would encourage other member states to consider extending deadlines in the exceptional circumstances. Moving on to the more general issues of the overcrowded hotspots, we greatly welcome the recent initiatives for the relocation of unaccompanied children, and the Fundamental Rights Agency will continue to support these efforts. We issued a practice note last week to support member states in receiving such children, and we will issue a major report on the matter, identifying good practice across the EU in the coming weeks. The one key message I would make to member states on this issue today is to avoid selecting children on the basis of criteria that serve no social purpose. Criteria such as nationality, the date of arrival in Europe, or the age group of the children. Moving now to the specific issue of arrivals during March, we very much welcome the decision to not continue the suspension of asylum procedures. But we are concerned regarding the fate of those who arrived during the month of March. We would recommend that the Greek authorities rescind retrospectively the order regarding the removal of asylum procedures during March, and to give timely access to procedures now to that cohort of people. And while their asylum applications are considered, we would encourage that they be housed in dignified reception facilities. We would also express concern regarding the imposition of criminal penalties on some of these people, because within the cohort, some may qualify for international protection, and if they have criminal penalties imposed on them, that would raise issues of international law. And finally, we would urge the authorities in Greece to take every step to ensure that there is no unlawful return of any of those who arrived during March, unlawful return which might raise the risk of refoulement. And let me conclude, Madam Chair, by again expressing appreciation for the cooperation with our sister EU agencies, and we're very pleased to be able to work closely with Frontex to put in place its fundamental rights monitoring capacity, which will play such an obviously important role in these present circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Flaherty. Now, Mr. Leggeri, can you hear me? Mr. Leggeri? Can you talk? Pushing the button? Continue. Mr. Leggeri, can you hear me, please? We're waiting for a minute. Probably we can't talk. Okay. We're waiting, but we continue with coordinators, and we have a problem with the time, do you know? And you have the floor for 2 minutes, each member, each coordinator. Mrs. Metsola,
Thank you,
Welcome.
Madam Chair.
You have the floor.
Thank you to our distinguished panel for meeting with us today to update us with all that is happening with the work and the countries you are dealing with. I think this is very important to deal particularly with the Greek-Turkish border situation. It is symptomatic of the entire debate, but I think it is safe for us to say that it is time for cool heads and de-escalation and serious discussions. As the Minister said, we're not only dealing with a migration crisis, but we're also dealing with a very severe and urgent health crisis. For starters, when we talk about Turkey, we cannot allow Turkey to try to blackmail Europe again by using some of the most vulnerable people on the planet as pawns in a geopolitical power play. This is unacceptable and it is irresponsible. Now, at the same time, we have heard from the Greek ministers, to which I thank them very much, that there is a lot of help being given to Greece, that there is solidarity being shown. I think in such a volatile time, it is essential that when countries on the front line are dealing with such urgent matters, that they find the help they need in a Europe that is united and can show solidarity. Now, going beyond the longer-term issues such as reforming Dublin and having a new migration pact on asylum and migration that we have to deal with in this mandate, I think we need to look at the more urgent issues which I will address now. First of all, to the Commission, can I know a little bit more in detail what channels of communication does the Commission have today with Turkey? We heard Prime Minister Mitsotakis yesterday with Christian Amanpour saying that there are no incidents of infection on the islands yet. However, we have to prepare for a scenario when that will happen. Will the Commission then commit on reviewing the situation periodically in Greece and adjusting? I hope this last question came through. Regarding the pledges, as Commissioner Johansson mentioned, to relocate unaccompanied minors, can we have a little bit more details as to the timing? Is the health crisis, is the pandemic preventing or delaying the relocation of such minors? It is good to see pledges, but when and how will the relocations start to take place? And finally, we have seen in a letter that Commissioners Johansson and Vice President Skinas sent to us about the 350 million euros pledged to manage the recent arrivals from Turkey. Can we know a little bit more whether healthcare facilities are being aided with this money, or will Greece be left to foot this bill alone? And finally, when we talk about such assistance, I would also look forward to listening to what Frontex will say. I would like to know whether the pandemic has meant that there is less personnel on the ground to help. It is one thing allocating money, but we also have seen that there is the need for additional personnel on the ground. Can we get a picture of how that is playing out at the moment in reality? Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Sippel from the S&D, are you here? Can you hear me? Can you talk? Push the button.
Can you talk? Thank you very much. Yes,
you have 2 minutes.
Thank you.
You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I think, first of all, thanks to all the speakers that we heard so far. And I think many of them mentioned the need of solidarity. And I think with all the understanding in the health crisis of isolated decisions in member states, we do see by now that no member state can manage the challenges all alone. This is true for migration, for economy, for health. So real solidarity is needed. But to be honest, I don't see that from the side of all of our member states. Therefore, I would precisely ask the Vice President of the Commission, Commissioner Skinas, how are you using precisely your political powers as Vice President of the Commission to push member states to realize that we only can deal and manage these challenges and other challenges as well all together? How will you get them back to solidarity and working together? Commissioner Johansson talked about the different steps that we try to organize now in these difficult times when it comes to evacuating the camps. And I think this needs to be done rapidly to avoid an outbreak of corona on the islands. So could you or maybe the Greek ministers tell us where we are in organizing rooms and places in hotels? How many places do we have? and how many member states so far are taking part in the relocation of unaccompanied minors, and might those member states also be ready to take on board families and work on family reunification? I also would like to ask a question also maybe to Mrs. Johansson, but also to the Greek ministers. What is meant by the camps that now will be organized? And it's good to organize new camps, but I understand they are multi-purpose reception and identification centers. And I would like to know how they will be organized. Will they be open or closed camps? For how many people will they be organized? And do we have not only the money but also the staff available in front to organize them? I think that's most important, and to make the best use of our time, I will stop here. Thanks again for everybody.
Thank to you. Mrs. Sindveld from Renew Europe, are you here? Can you hear me? Can you talk? Pushing the button. Mrs. Sindveld? Okay, you have the floor for 2 minutes.
I don't know. It seems you are live. Aber jetzt ist die Flagge auf der anderen Seite.
We will continue with Mrs. Tardino from the ID. Leggeri. Mr. Leggeri. Welcome.
Mr.
Mr. Leggeri, you have the floor for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Very clear.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for inviting me and organizing this session in such exceptional circumstances. I would like, from the perspective of Frontex, the European Border and Coast Guard Agency, to brief the LIBE Committee on the situation at the Greek border. First, I would like to set the scene. At the beginning of
Bon. Mrs. Sindveld, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You
can you hear me? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is indeed, we're a bit handicapped. I have a number of questions. First of all, to Commissioner Johansson, and we have discussed this before, about the evacuation or relocation of people who are currently stuck on the islands. We keep hearing different names of countries and different numbers of pledges. Can we please get a final list? Which countries have pledged to relocate people and how many? And which country is starting already next week? I think it is really important also to convince other countries to come on board. Secondly, what does the European Commission do about countries other than Greece, which have suspended the right to asylum, which are only basically registering people who are the new arrivals? Then the new arrivals since the 1st of March in Greece, I understand that they are being registered only by the police and Frontex, and they are kept under substandard conditions. I would like to get a little more explanation about that, because even if the right to asylum was suspended, rightfully or not, I think the kind of treatment people are getting upon registration by the police and Frontex, so not the dedicated services, I think that is very, very worrisome. And finally, to Mr. Leggeri, who's going to speak after this, so maybe he can include this in his intervention. First of all, I would like to know, will you fully investigate and report on all allegations of disproportionate violence and pushbacks? We are very worried about the incident, for example, with the Danish Frontex officers refusing to carry out orders to push people back, and I think we deserve a full report. And secondly, we hear rumors that member states are considering to pull out their dispatched officers who are now in Frontex operations, for example, on the border of Greece, because of COVID-19. Can you confirm or reassure us that that is not the case? Because if member states start pulling out their Frontex staff, then we have a big problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Infeld. Mr. Leggeri, can you hear me? Mr. Leggeri, can you talk? Pushing the button? No? Oh, okay. We are waiting for a minute. No? We continue with Mrs. Tarino from the ID. Can you hear me, Mrs. Tarino? Mrs. Tarino, can you hear me? Can you talk? No. We continue with Mrs. Strick from the Greens. Mrs. Strick, can you hear me? No.
Push to.
Oh, yes. You have the floor for 2 minutes.
Now I can. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thanks to all the speakers of this hearing. Let me emphasize first that we already had facing a humanitarian crisis because of the overcrowdedness of the Greek islands, where minors were left on their own and there was a shortage of all basic needs for everyone. Now, this has transformed into an urgent health crisis, as there's also no sanitation, no space for isolation, and so on. Yet, if I look at the current measures, they all date back from before the coronavirus crisis. If you look at the millions in the budget, then you see that 50 million only is reserved for medical care. I think we really think that this is insufficient. The relocation is now still only limited to unaccompanied minors and only to 1,600, whereas the European Parliament urged for preventive evacuation of all vulnerable asylum seekers from the islands, and also many doctors urge for preventive evacuation. And they say that protecting migrants against the virus while keeping them on the islands is simply unrealistic. There is no space for that. Yet I hear the Greek government say there's no space on the mainland to do the evacuation. But I would think there's definitely more possibilities to do it on the mainland. What about accommodation available, hotels available? Has there been any investigation? And what does the Commission do to press for more for evacuation? And also the Council, what does the Council do to press member states for more relocation also of non-unaccompanied, other people than unaccompanied minors, and also to do swift family reunification procedures. There's also very limited access to legal aid, medical care and humanitarian aid. And this is especially difficult now in those circumstances, but also for new arrivals more specifically. UNHCR does not have access. What about allegations of pushbacks at the borders or penalization of irregular stay? And about suspension of asylum claims, can you be more precise? If asylum requests are now proceeded again, we also heard that the asylum services has been suspended. So please, more concrete information. Has there been any no deportation? I would urge for no deportation and also no detention anymore, whereas the Turkish government does not admit any returns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Strick. Mr. Leggeri, can you hear me? No. We continue with Mrs. Tarino from the ID. Mrs. Tarino, can you hear me? We wait for you. Please, pushing button. Can you talk, Mrs. Tarino? Yes. We wait for 1 minute. Push the button, Mrs. Tarino. Oh. Oh, no. Again, please push the button. Again, Mrs. Tarino. Okay, you have the floor. Oh, please. Again. Twice. Once. Yes. Mrs. Tarino, please push the button again. Okay. Oh. Une fois et attendre. Okay. Push once and wait. Pulse y espere. Good. You have the floor? No. Okay. The micro doesn't work. Oh. Doesn't work. Oh. We continue with Procaccini? Yes. Mr. Procaccini from the ECR, can you hear me? Mr. Procaccini from the ECR. Okay, you have the floor. Pushing the button. Oh, the audio doesn't work. No. Okay, can you refresh the page, Mr. Procaccini?
Mi sentite adesso?
Oh, thank you.
Sì, buongiorno, mi sentite? Perfetto. Buongiorno a tutti. Ringrazio tutti i relatori intervenuti. Ringrazio le autorità greche in particolare per il duro lavoro che stanno svolgendo in questa crisi aggravata dalla emergenza sanitaria. Io ritengo assolutamente giuste tutte le misure di aiuto economico e logistico alla Grecia in questa fase. Ritengo anche giusto e necessario occuparsi della situazione dei minori non accompagnati. Sono molto preoccupato invece, anche ascoltando alcuni colleghi, dell'ipotesi di approfittare di questa emergenza sanitaria per la ricollocazione di decine di migliaia di immigrati irregolari in Europa. Ed è, credo, un paradosso, considerando che io in questo momento non sono in grado, non mi è consentito neanche di andare nella città accanto a quella in cui vivo, pensare di distribuire decine di migliaia di immigrati irregolari su tutto il territorio europeo mi sembra un po' il classico cavallo di Troia per cercare di approfittare della situazione, dell'emergenza sanitaria per andare a creare ulteriori problemi di ordine pubblico in Europa e di ordine sanitario. Questo è esattamente il momento in cui bisognerebbe fare una forte azione di contrasto alle partenze dell'immigrazione irregolare, perché pensare di risolvere il problema all'arrivo in Europa, magari in un'isola greca, è una follia che rischia di creare ulteriori problemi anche di ordine sanitario, non soltanto in Europa, ma anche nelle terre di origine. Questo è un momento in cui bisognerebbe cercare di avere il buon senso di pensare all'emergenza sanitaria e a come evitare di aggravare questa emergenza. Dopodiché mi limito a dire, sul fronte anche del rapporto con la Turchia, che credo che questo sia un altro paradosso. Pensare di continuare a sommergere di attenzioni e di soldi il premier turco Erdogan significa non aver chiaro che l'Europa dovrebbe essere innanzitutto solidale con se stessa, con i propri stati come la Grecia, e cercare di mettere a riparo i propri stati dalle aggressioni che arrivano dall'esterno. Io non ho domande da fare ai ministri greci, ho soltanto da ringraziare la Grecia per il lavoro che sta facendo, perché difendendo il popolo greco stanno difendendo i popoli di tutta Europa.
Grazie. Mrs. Tardino from the ID, can you hear me? Can you talk pushing the button? No? We will continue with Mrs. Ernst from the UA. Mrs. Ernst, are you here? No. We wait for a minute. Mrs. Ernst, can you connect with her? On continue avec le reste. Ah oui. Mr. López Aguilar, our chair, can you hear me? Mr. López Aguilar, can you hear me? Chair? No? We wait. Okay. Oh. Chair? Try again.
Hello.
Okay, you have the floor.
Can I talk? Yes. Hello, good morning, everybody. Thanks for standing up to the commitment of the LIBE committee, even in these impossible conditions. And thank you for your patience, despite all the technical difficulties. I thank all of the contributions, all of the speakers that have taken the floor. And of course, I do share, I make mine every concern that has been expressed. But I'd like to address 3 specific questions, the shortest possible, 2 to the Commission and 1 to the Greek authorities, to the Greek ministers, which are sharing their time with the rest of us. First, to the Commission. The first question is, when is it going to happen? When those 1,600 unaccompanied minors are going to be transferred, first to the mainland and then to those countries which have not been named, which are willing to share the allocation. So be active part of that first initiative of relocation. The second question goes as to the Commission to make sure that those 350 million euros that have been described in their specific allocations are going to be filling their very purpose. How are you going to make sure? Because we have heard and we have received letters and we have heard testimonies that some of the initiatives that have been put in motion, set in motion so far, have not fulfilled their actual purpose, because there have been some bureaucratic or political interference by the authorities in the middle, so that they would not reach out to the very destination of those allocations. And the third question goes to the Greek authorities. What is the contingency plan? Should that be the case that there would be an outbreak of the virus in the camps? In the camps, which has not been the issue so far, but there has been contagions in the islands in which those camps are located. What's going to happen if there is an outbreak of the virus in the camps? Are they going to be confined there with no medical assistance, with no proper sanitary conditions, for not allowing a death toll, an intolerable and unbearable death toll to take place on the spot? Which is the contingency plan? What would be the measures in order to decongest those camps, in order to provide for transfers or relocations to safe places to those most in need or the most vulnerable persons? Three specific questions. To make the best out of the time available, I would like to hear specific answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Mrs. Daly
Mrs.
is here as coordinator from UE. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the speakers. I have to say I found the introductions a little bit one-sided, in the sense that we seem to be clapping ourselves on the back at securing Europe's borders, but not so much attention on Europe adhering to its legal responsibilities and respect for fundamental rights. And I echo some of the points made about a lot of these problems predating the COVID crisis. In terms, I remember the Greek minister appearing before us in November or October telling us there were thousands of unaccompanied minors already there. So on that issue, I'd like to know what is the timescale also. But I have some other very direct questions that I'll maybe focus in on first. In terms of the Greek minister, Mitarachi, you are aware that the the European Committee for the Prevention of Torture have just completed a 5-day rapid visit to Greece 2 weeks ago, and they issued you with preliminary findings, according to their press statement, with immediate measures that they required implemented to improve the situation on the islands. What were those measures, and what have the Greek authorities done to do that? Have you produced the report? You can release that report and publish it as the Greek authorities, and I'm asking you, will you publish that report? Commissioner Johansson, I'd like to know whether you have asked the Greek authorities for that report, and if not, why not, given that your department is responsible for hundreds of millions of European taxpayers' money going to fund detention centres in that area. So I'd like to know what steps the Commission have taken, and why Commissioner Johansson hasn't criticised the presidential decree which banned access to asylum in March. We hear this is going to be lifted now, but do you, Commissioner, know what happened to the people in detention, what happened to the people where already return decisions were made and whom were put on the SIS system, and what actions have you taken to remedy these breaches of European law? You are probably aware, and I'd like you to comment on the reports in the Greek media, that a new law on migration is being prepared by the Greek Ministry of Migration, which is in flagrant violation of EU law, where it's proposing that asylum seekers would not have the option of a personal interview, that language does not have to be taken into account, that if they had stayed in another country for more than two months without being threatened, allegedly, their request for asylum would be unadmitted. So I want to know what steps the Commission took on that. And last question, Chair, just back to the Greek Ministry again. I've just been informed that on the camp of Syres, that it's actually a private security firm who's undertaking the security at that camp. I'd like to know, why aren't the Greek police undertaking this work? Is this a practice that's going to be replicated in the future? And what scrutiny is being undertaken in that regard?
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Hermst, as Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, can you hear me? Mr. Herbst, please, can you hear? Oh, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ah, great.
Of course.
Wonderful. Just let me say a few words on behalf of the Budget Committee. We know perfectly well that it's really important to stand ready to support Greece right now. Let me just refer to the draft amending budget that was proposed a few days ago, which is by far the most important issue for us concerning the situation in Greece right now. I can assure you that we in the Budget Committee aim to process this proposal as speedily as currently possible. You all know that it's quite difficult these days, and I cannot tell you what the time schedule for the next few days will be, but we are really devoted to be as speedily as possible. We also depend on the Council as well. Please bear in mind that, the other arm of the budget authority, and maybe we need to raise some awareness there as well. But let me just refer, since Commissioner Johansson already told you what this additional 350 million euro will be spent for. We also have to bear in mind that the overall level of funding, this is what we see right now, of the current multi-annual financial framework was simply set too low, and that the national envelope for Greece concerning this matter was too low. And we must learn from our mistakes, also that we are not sufficiently flexible to adapt new challenges and new circumstances right now. And we have to bear this in mind concerning the multi-annual financial framework discussion that we'll have in the next few weeks. And we need to strive for a more ambitious multi-annual financial framework. And I think the agencies, especially Frontex, will agree. We need to have an ambitious MFF in order to prevent such situations for the future.
Thank you. We will continue with Mrs. Tarino. Can you hear me? Mrs. Tarino, please push your button. We wait for a minute. Okay, we can't. Yes. No. Oh, try again, Mrs. Tardino. Yes. No. You can, Mrs. Tardino. We are sure. Oh. Please try it again, Mrs. Tardino. Please. Okay. Oh. Yes. Mrs. Tardino, we talk by telephone. No? Mr. Leggeri. Mr. Leggeri, by telephone, by mobile. Okay. You have the floor, Mr. Leggeri, for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Honorable members of the Parliament, distinguished participants, thank you for the invitation, and I will present from Frontex perspective the situation at the Greek border. At the beginning of March, we got a request from Greek authorities to launch 2 rapid interventions, one at the land border, one at the maritime border. Within 5 working days, we were able to agree on the operational plan with Greek authorities. And on the 12th of March, I was at the land border with Minister Chrysochoidis in order to attend the pre-deployment briefing and to kick off the deployment. I also would like to say that there was a very strong solidarity that was expressed by the management board of Frontex. All member states make together a statement and encouraged the rapid intervention to be deployed swiftly. Now, what is our analysis of the situation on the ground? On the ground, we are closely monitoring the situation at the Greek-Turkish external border, and we could immediately see that the statements made by Turkish political authorities, Turkish president, that the borders were open to the European Union, sparked violent attempts to cross illegally the border. Some migrants were transported from Istanbul to the border region in the area of Pazakule border crossing point on Turkish side, and this led to a situation at the land border where we had certain days up to 15,000 migrants waiting on the Turkish side. Now, what we can see is that the situation shows that the European Union has to have its own capacities to properly manage the external borders. It shows also that it's always good to have cooperation with third countries in order to monitor our external borders together with them. But when we over-rely on neighboring countries, we might get into trouble. Here, I would like to say that the Greek authorities made very strong decisions and that there was no vulnerability, and they were very swift in requesting the rapid border intervention, and there was so no vulnerability, and we were able, together with the Greek authorities and together with all the member states, to reinforce the management of our external borders and to make it clear that we wanted to keep order at the external border and not allow violent attempts to cross it. So therefore, the rule of law was also upheld. I also would like to say that our analysis of the situation is that now on the Turkish side of the borders, there were mostly nationalities like Afghans, Pakistanis, Iraqis, Bangladeshis. So there were not so many Syrians, and many of the migrants raised some concerns about COVID-19, and that's why Turkish authorities decided to move them back to the inland, to the region of Istanbul. But what we understand is that the volatile situation may repeat again in a couple of times. In total, since the 1st of March, there was an amount of close the land borders and 2,200 that crossed illegally the maritime borders. So in a nutshell, we can say that the borders were under control. What was the operational response in the context of COVID-19? More than 100 additional officers were deployed at the land borders, and more than 100 additional Coast Guard officers were deployed at the maritime operation. In total, we have right now up to 600 border guards or Coast Guard officers deployed by Frontex in Greece. In total, at EU level, we have close to 800 officers deployed. So you can see that 75% of the border guards deployed are now in Greece, because this is a priority, and this was clearly the message I sent to all contributing member states, that Greece is the priority. Now, we activated, of course, the business continuity plan in the agency. So far, the plan is that we prioritize Greece while maintaining Themis and Indalo, respectively, in Italy and Spain, as well as our operation in Albania and in Bulgaria. We downscaled some of them, but nevertheless, we are able to provide the border guard. We are now considering rotation of staff, maybe in 1 month from now, with our own air transport capacities. We also agreed on mutual recognition of the quarantine arrangement between the participating member states and the host member states. So step by step, we are able to ensure a sustainable presence on the ground, first of all in Greece, but also in other places where needed. I would like to say that in the area of return, we also keep some capacities in Greece, although since the 5th of March, there was no readmission operations anymore. In the context of COVID-19, Turkish authorities suspended the readmissions from the Greek islands to Turkish territory. We are working closely with Greek authorities and the European Commission, as this was also announced by Commissioner Johansson, on a return plan, so forced return and voluntary return. And there is a first wave of 1,700 returnees that should be prepared for return, and Frontex on its side has the capacity with return specialists in order to support Greece with the identification procedures. We also have forced return escort and counselors ready. Right now we have still 11 staff in Greece, and provided that member states can make their return specialists and forced return escorts ready, we could beef up if necessary and as soon as it is possible in the context of COVID-19 to start a forced or voluntary return. Concerning the fundamental rights and asylum situation, what I can say is that all the fundamental rights safeguards which are enshrined in all our operational plans, and in particular operational plan Poseidon and operational plan Land Borders, they are of course activated and valid, so they also apply to the rapid intervention. So the legal framework has not changed. We have all our commitments regarding fundamental rights in place.
Please, Mr. Leggeri, more slowly, please.
Hello?
More slowly.
Hello?
You talk very fast.
More slowly.
Slowly.
Hello?
Okay. Mr. Leggeri, can you hear me? Interpreters say that you talk very, very fast. Please talk slowly.
Okay, I will talk slowly. So regarding the fundamental rights, we have in place the safeguards which are enshrined in the regular operational plan for Poseidon and the land border operation in Greece, and these safeguards are applicable also to our rapid intervention deployment. We have the standard practice of escalating the fundamental rights incidents to the headquarters of the agency, to the International Cooperation Center, which has the command and control authority at tactical level in Greece. And we also have in the loop our fundamental rights officer and fundamental rights office. There was a question about an incident involving a Danish vessel that was given instructions by Greek authorities that were not in line with the practice of non-refoulement, and this was explained to the local authorities. And since this incident, to the best of my knowledge, there was no more incident repeated like this. This was apparently a misunderstanding, but we cleared everything, and I'm ready if this is expected by the Parliament to give a report in writing about this incident and the response that was given both by Frontex and also by the authorities who have the tactical command powers in Greece. So I can also confirm that
So please finish it.
The Fundamental Rights Agency in order to test the pilot project in the future in order to recruit and deploy fundamental rights monitors. And this is a pilot project which is ongoing, and I'm confident that this cooperation will also help Frontex in monitoring the situation right now. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. One important remark. Members who could not speak today may send their questions to the Chair and Secretariat, or will forward them to the speakers for reply in writing. And we will try, finally, Mrs. Tardino, can you hear me? Mrs. Tardino? Can you try? No? What? When? We wait for a minute. Please, Mrs. Tardino, push the button. No, doesn't work. Okay, now back to our speakers to hear the answers to the question posed. Replies from Minister Chrysokoidis. Can you hear me? Very briefly for your answers. Okay, very briefly, please.
Ναι, πολύ σύντομα θα απαντήσω σε δύο ζητήματα. Το ένα αφορά, ακούστηκε μία παρατήρηση σε σχέση με pushback, με αποθήσεις, και θέλω να πω ότι πρέπει να είμαστε πάρα πολύ προσεκτικοί στις φήμες που κυκλοφόρησαν όλο αυτό το χρονικό διάστημα. Γίναμε αποδέκτες fake news, τα οποία αποδείχθηκαν μέσα σε λίγες ώρες πόσο παραπλανητικά ήταν. Σας θυμίζω ότι ο κύριος Ερντογάν την πρώτη μέρα είπε ότι 60.000 ήδη οδεύουν προς Ευρώπη. Και την επόμενη μέρα είπε ότι έχουν φτάσει τις 160.000. Λέγοντας ουσιαστικά ψέματα για να διαμορφώσουν ένα κλίμα προκειμένου να οθήσουν και άλλους ανθρώπους δυστυχισμένους να πλησιάσουν, να προσεγγίσουν την ελληνοτουρκική μεθόριο. Θέλω να σας πω λοιπόν με κάθε εντιμότητα και ειλικρίνεια ότι ό,τι έγινε όλες αυτές τις μέρες στην ελληνοτουρκική μεθόριο έγινε υπό το φως δεκάδων ή εκατοντάδων μέσων ενημέρωσης από όλο τον κόσμο. Θέλω να πω ότι ήταν πάνω από 50 κανάλια στην περιοχή και ειδησιογραφικά πρακτορεία, και όταν ένα πράγμα, ένα γεγονός το καταγράφουν χιλιάδες μάτια και το ακούνε χιλιάδες αυτιά, δεν μπορεί να κρυφτεί τίποτα. Και δεν έχουμε να κρύψουμε απολύτως τίποτα. Όλα έγιναν υπό το φως της ημέρας της δημοσιότητας. Μα κυρίως την ώρα που οι ελληνικές δυνάμεις, όπως σας είπα, δέχονταν επιθέσεις για τις οποίες κινδύνευε η ζωή τους, αντέδρασαν με ψυχραιμία και επαγγελματισμό. Είμαστε στην ίδια γραμμή. Είμαστε με τις αξίες του ευρωπαϊκού πολιτισμού, είμαστε με τις αξίες του ευρωπαϊκού δικαίου ασύλου, είμαστε μαζί στο σεβασμό των ανθρωπίνων δικαιωμάτων και προστατεύουμε στην πράξη καθημερινά την εφαρμογή των διεθνών συμβάσεων που αναφέρονται στις πανανθρώπινες αξίες και στα ανθρώπινα δικαιώματα. Αυτή είναι η διαβεβαίωση που θέλω να σας παράσχω εκ μέρους της ελληνικής κυβέρνησης, και αυτό θα κάνουμε παρά την τεράστια πίεση που όλοι αναγνωρίζετε δέχεται αυτή τη στιγμή η Ελλάδα σε σχέση με το προσφυγικό μεταναστευτικό ζήτημα. Το δεύτερο θέμα το οποίο θέλω να τονίσω έχει να κάνει με τη Frontex. Θέλω να σας πω ότι σταδιακά και σε συνεννόηση στη συνέχεια με τον κύριο Λεζερή κάποιες δυνάμεις θα αποχωρήσουν, κυρίως αυτές σε πρώτη φάση που ήρθαν με μια διμερή συμφωνία και θέλω και πάλι να τις ευχαριστήσω. Τα μέτρα ασφαλείας και υγιεινής που λαμβάνονται για το προσωπικό και της Frontex αλλά και των ελληνικών αστυνομικών και στρατιωτικών δυνάμεων είναι πάρα πολύ αυστηρά και συνεπώς δεν υπάρχει κανένας κίνδυνος. Θα συνεχίσουμε να παίρνουμε αυτά τα μέτρα γιατί αυτό που κυρίως προέχει αυτή τη στιγμή είναι για να κρατήσουμε όρθια την Ελλάδα, για να κρατήσουμε όρθια την Ευρώπη. Τα σώματα ασφαλείας, η αστυνομία παίζει πάρα πολύ κρίσιμο ρόλο στη διαχείριση της επιδημίας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you. Thank you. One additional remark. 3 minutes each speaker maximum. If need be, they can send additional replies in writing. Okay. Mr. Skinas, are you here? Mrs. Johansson? Mr. O'Flaherty? Can you hear me? No? Yes? 3 minutes maximum.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief since no question was put particularly to me. But in reaction to the comments of Ms. Daly, I would like to stress the importance of ensuring in law in any member state the importance of individuated asylum procedures. We must maintain individuated asylum procedure to be compliant with EU and international law. Secondly, I'd like to again come back to a dimension of the situation that didn't receive so much attention this morning, and that is the particular situation of the 2,000 or so people who arrived during the month of March. It may well be the case that few of these people are entitled to international protection, but again, procedures must be put in place and must be more clearly visible so that these issues can be determined on the basis of, as I said, individual determination procedures. And thirdly and finally, Madam Chair, I would like to stress the acute risk within the camps on the islands from COVID-19. It's difficult to overstate the extent of the risk. We're all familiar with what makes us vulnerable, what are the risk factors. And within these camp facilities, these risk factors are exacerbated to a degree that's difficult to imagine. And so this is a matter of high urgency in terms of imaginative, immediate responses, including, as has been mentioned, the use of tourist and other hotel facilities. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Minister Mitaraki, can you hear me? Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. I will start by responding to the chairman about contingency plans. Yes, we have a contingency plan for the camps in case we have an outbreak, isolating people in special quarantine areas, setting up additional quarantine areas in the vicinity of the camps where the need arises. You mentioned the need to move people in safe places. To be honest, sir, I'm not sure what is a safe place. I mean, Ricciona was deemed a safe place, and we were planning some moves from Moria to Ricciona, and now we have an outbreak in Ricciona, and which was a much well-managed camp run by the International Organization of Migration that has all the sanitary facilities with no problems like Moria, and we have the outbreak there. We do not have the capacity for mass evacuations. We do not have spare rooms in the mainland. Going through an unlimited number of hotels, it's something we're happy to work with. But we need to talk about the funding for these additional 40,000 beds, for how long, and whether we can find them. Notwithstanding the issue of the EU-Turkey joint statement, which we need to know whether it is the position that this needs to be amended to allow for movements of people outside the islands and still to be eligible for returns, because from these 42,000 people, maybe less than half are entitled to international protection. The rest should be returned, of course, following due process. But if we move out of the joint statement, that will not be the case unless the EU and Turkey negotiate a new joint statement. On the case of people that arrived in March, we have had an issue which was raised by the Council of Europe, and I did take I paid particular attention to the remarks they made. To be honest, we did not have standby capacity in the islands, expecting coronavirus and expecting the outbreak of Turkey. So we did not have, in the first few days, the facilities that you would want to have. And it took us 2 weeks. We spent 8 million, and we have applied for funding for that, to create 2 temporary camps in Malakasa and Ceres. We moved people there. We had the International Red Cross on site to ensure that these people are taken care of all their medical needs. We're doing an absolutely best to respond to a crisis, to a double crisis that has evolved, and we're working very closely with the Commission and the AGOs to achieve that. 2 final points. One on the multi-purpose centers. What we want to do is we want to have the registration, the asylum offices there. We want to have safe zones for families, for unaccompanied minors, so they're not part of what we call a general population, and that's why we call them multi-purpose centers. There will be centers where people that are not restricted by the directives will be allowed, of course, to enter and exit. We will have house rules, and I think it's important for these camps to have house rules which are fully in line with international treaties and the directives. A final point about asylum. We are exploring to restart the asylum process by using technology like Skype or other platforms, but I need to tell you that we had a backlog of 125,000 approximately applications. This is more than the arrivals of 2019 and 2020, so we were really much behind. And we have had 19,000 cases where the interview has been completed, but there is no decision. So we're taking full advantage of this time where we have no access for the public at the asylum services to issue the decisions for the interviews already undertaken. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Skinas, can you hear me? Commissioner Skinas? Commissioner Skinas? Oh, Commissioner Johansson, can you hear me? No? Yes? We wait? One moment.
Now?
Yes.
How about you can hear me? Yes, good. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for actually, I'm a bit impressed that we've managed to do it this, even though under these circumstances. So thank you all for very patient things. I'm trying to answer all the questions. Unaccompanied minors, Mrs. Metsola, Mrs. Intveld, and Mr. Lopez Aguilar asked about this. And we have now, with our money, the Greek authorities now are moving the unaccompanied minors to transit centers. And I think they have quite good progress in this, taking into account the lockdown and all the problems. So this is actually going quite quick, there they are prepared by being tested, for example, before they can be relocated to member states. We have pledges around 1,600 from Luxembourg, Germany, France, Portugal, Finland, Lithuania, Croatia, and Ireland. I must also say that we are working together with some other member states, so hopefully we can get more member states on board. The first ones are going to be relocated this week or at the latest next week to Luxembourg, who are the first one to be able to welcome them. I also got the question whether there are any delays. Yes, there are some delays. Both according to the situation, of course, with the lockdowns, with the very few flights, and of course with some additional testing. And for example, in Croatia, I know that the facilities they have for these unaccompanied minors to welcome them were actually destroyed by the earthquake. So we must understand that this is also causing some delays in Croatia, for example. But it's going on quite quickly and have a very, very good relation and cooperation with the Greek authorities. On family reunification, I think Mrs. Sippel raised that, I think, extremely important issue. And what we are doing right now from the Commission is that we are producing guidelines to help member states to continue as much as possible as business as usual when it comes to the asylum processes and all other important processes, including family reunification. So hopefully we can help member states to get on track with this, because I fully agree that is very, very important. Both Mrs. Sippel and Mrs. Strick asked me, are there enough hotel rooms and apartments for this relocation of the vulnerable people out of the camps? I haven't got the figures, but we are working very closely with UNHCR, and UNHCR say, yes, we have enough to do this relocation of the vulnerable ones out of the camps right now, because it's very, very urgent to do it right now. Mrs. Metsola and Mrs. Strick asked me about the health care, whether that is covered by the money, and yes, it is. So we also pay for healthcare and medical equipment. I must also say that a lot of member states also facilitated Greece with a lot of important equipment, including healthcare equipment, under the civil protection mechanism that was activated by with the tension with Turkey. So this is also something that can be used for these purposes. Mrs. Daly criticized me for not having criticized the Greek government, and yes, I have done that, and that of course was also mentioned by the Greek minister. This is very important for me and for the Commission, that we stick to our values and that we have to follow EU law and fundamental rights and international convention. And we have a very frank dialogue with the Greek government about this, and I'm very happy that they now will open this applications for all those that arrived during March. Mrs. Daly also asked how we do with new legislative proposals, and I must say all new legislative proposals for any member states, it's not special for Greece, for any member states, according to asylum process, for example, it's always being studied by my services, and if there is any question marks or concerns whether this really is comply to EU law, we will raise that issue, and we will do it also, of course, in Greece. But this is nothing special for Greece; it's for all member states. About the CPT report, as far as I understand, this is not being finalized yet. But I think that if preliminary findings are being sent to the Greek authorities, but we are in very close contact with the Council of Europe, of course, and these are always things that we take into account. Mr. Lopez Aguilar asked about how can we make sure that the money that we allocate really reach to the right purposes. And I must say that this is, of course, extremely important, and we work hand in hand with the Greek government and the Greek authorities, and we have very good cooperation, and we work also very, very, very close together with IOM and UNHCR, which are very good organizations with professional people on the ground. We also have 12 people employed by DG Home, very dedicated people that are working more or less around the clock right now in Athens, but also on the islands, and very close cooperation with also the UN organizations and the Greek authorities. So we are doing the utmost together to really make sure that money is used for the right purposes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Skinas. Skinas, no? Okay. Mr. O'Flaherty. Okay, Grass. Mrs. Grass. Mr. Oh. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Oh, Mrs.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I just wanted to go back to the question raised by Mrs. Strick to the presidency on the relocation of unaccompanied minors from Greece, what we are doing to increase the number of member states. And on this question, I wanted to remind that we were having a first discussion on the need to relocate the minors from Greece to member states at the extraordinary council meeting held on 4th March, and we had another opportunity to discuss it on the regular Home Affairs Council, which was held on the 13th of March. We are continuing our regular exchange on this issue at the video conferences that are being conducted twice a week with the Commission. They have now been reduced to once a week, but this issue is permanently on our agenda, and we are taking care not only on the numbers and member states that are going to be engaged, but as the presidency, in coordination with the Commission, we are also taking care in the Council that the standard operating procedures for this relocation exercise are being agreed as soon as possible. So I hope that this answers the question of Madam Strick. If there is anything of additional information that she might need to be provided by the presidency, we are ready to give them in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you.
Commissioner Skinas, can you hear me? No. No. We continue. Commissioner Skinas? No. Okay. Mr. O'Flaherty. Oh, yes. Beginning. Ya ha contestado. Okay. Okay. But I would like to thank you all our speakers and members who participated in this first committee video meeting under very difficult circumstances and made this debate a very interesting one. And our final remark, the next LIBE meeting may take place mid-April, exact time to be confirmed. As today's meeting proved that the technical system works, we will extend the duration of the meeting to take sure that all members can speak. Thank you again for your patience and understanding. Take care and safe. Thank you.